So I'm Hannah Brancato.
And I'm Rebecca Nagel.
And we're Force Upsetting Rape Culture. So we're a duo of artists and activists that are doing a series of actions to call attention to the culture of rape. And tonight we were
projecting Rape is Rape onto the Capitol building, along with stories of survivors who've experienced sexual violence that falls outside of the narrow category of forcible rape, because we feel like in the national conversation about forcible rape and legitimate rape and all of the political debate that's going on in the election year, that the stories of survivors have been left out.
It's good that we're having a national conversation about rape, but that unfortunately survivors have continued to be silenced in that conversation. So we're hoping that more people feel confident and comfortable to come forward. And I mean, we're also hoping to kind of use the momentum that already happened from the fact that people started to feel comfortable to speak up and say, you know, this isn't right, this doesn't parallel with my experience, and sort of use that momentum to get people actually talking about the specific situation. So we're talking about date rape, we're talking about marital rape, we're talking about incest, we're talking about, we're talking about men getting raped as well as women getting raped. So it's a complicated conversation, and the line is blurry, and we want to make sure that people are addressing that.
And it goes deeper than election year politics, so it's not just like Republicans versus Democrats and, a couple politically incorrect statements that some of our politicians made. Those statements come from deep origins of what we think rape is in this country. And even though people recognize the legitimacy of things like date rape, forcible rape is the only public image, the only story that we're told of what rape is or what rape looks like. But it actually only accounts for 14% of rape, and so the other 86% of rape survivors, their stories are never told and are never heard.
And then, of course, we're using media and art to address this, because we think that there's a lot of media imagery that perpetuates the things that Rebecca was just talking about forcible rape. And so the more media that's out there that's telling a different story, the better.
Do you want to describe a little bit about the different medias you use, both the projection and the other forms that you utilize?
Sure. So the first project that we did was an art show that was called Force on the Culture of Rape. And so it was a collection of video works, mostly media, that by a variety of different artists that address different parts of rape culture. So one piece was about consent, another piece was about the way that transgender people are represented in the media and the kind of violence that goes along with that. And so that art show was a way for us to have a dialogue with the art community in Baltimore about rape culture. And then more recently.
And then, actually, maybe we shouldn't talk about that.
Actually, we have something else coming up that's like a little bit
we don't want to talk. It's a secret.
We'll talk to you again about it after it happens.
And hopefully, then we'll be excited to talk about it.
But it has to do with a corporation that we think perpetuates rape with their products. So.
Word.
Yeah.
We'll stay tuned to that.
Yeah.
Why did you choose this particular location for the projection?
Well, the people who, we can count them. So first there was forcible rape, which came from the no taxpayers' money for abortion. And that was Ryan and Aiken supported that bill. And then there was Aiken's public statement about legitimate rape and how with legitimate rape women don't get pregnant. And then most recently there was a Wisconsin Republican that said that some girls rape easy publicly. So all of these people who are making decisions about our laws, about our penal codes, about our laws around women's reproductive rights, are working in this building and have views that we think need to be challenged. So we felt like it was a perfect backdrop, a perfect space for that conversation.
And we should also say, we're not just trying to point out the culture of rape, we're also pointing out that there has to be an alternative culture of consent that's being promoted. And to be fair, there was a new definition of rape that was approved by the FBI this year that focuses on consent and then includes men. And so prior to that, the national definition of rape excluded men. So that's really significant, but it's still up to states and individual lawmakers to uphold that and to honor that new definition.
Yeah, and so the new definition came out of the Penn State case. So when the FBI started to investigate the sex abuse cases at Penn State, their definition of rape didn't cover those survivors because their definition of rape was only for women, and it was the carnal knowledge, the forcible carnal knowledge of a woman's body. So they changed their definition of rape, which actually doesn't really change that much the way rapes get prosecuted. It just changes how the FBI reports rape. So it's actually up to individual states to change their laws. And so we think that the FBI's change in the definition of rape is a really good model that other lawmakers should follow.
Do you know how Maryland prosecutes rapists? And
I don't know a lot about that.
I don't know specifically about the penal code in Maryland.
It's a good question.
Yeah, I was looking into it to try and see like how, because basically the FBI's definition is awesome because it says without consent. That's how they define rape, is that without the person's consent. And I was trying to see how many states do that, and it's really hard to find that information. Actually, it's not out there, which is interesting.
And it goes so, and I mean, it like Baltimore had the kind of a scandal where rapes were being underreported because police officers were finding rapes as unfounded as a way to get rape statistics down. And there was an article in the Sun about that 2 years ago when we had the show Forceps on the culture of rape.
Right.
And so, so there's the law and there's these definitions and there's how things are prosecuted, but then there's how things are actually happening and how the media is covering it and the way that the conversation is happening. So there's the lived experiences and then there's rape culture, and we're sort of like trying to tackle both. And we're not lawmakers, we're not policymakers, and so we're using like the tools that we have as artists and activists and citizens to do what we can.
do you have any suggestions for other people on how to get involved in both fighting rape culture and promoting a culture of consent?
Practice consent. I think, I mean, it's a personal experience. I mean, if you're not familiar with what consent is, Google it. There are some awesome resources out there. ConsentIsSexy.com is one of them. .org. ConsentIsSexy.org. And so just practice consent in all sexual interactions. And then I think as a culture, we need to have a conversation. So rape is one of those things where it's a very silenced topic and it's a very uncomfortable topic. So to support survivors and to change our culture, we need to just start having conversations about it and having these conversations that make us uncomfortable.
And instead of asking like, was it, clearly forcible, asking, was it consensual? And again, that's where that definition is important, but it also is, it's sort of, in my opinion, it's equally as important because it affects like the lived experience of survivors, how we're talking about it in the media. So instead of saying, well, she must have been asking for it because she was wearing that, or because she was out at that hour, or because she was drunk, or whatever the justification is.
Yeah, a lot in our culture needs to change when it comes to sexual violence in this very crazy way. Like no other crime, the burden is put on the victim of a crime. So like if my car gets robbed, it's not my fault that my car got robbed. But if I get sexually assaulted, well, maybe kind of it's my fault, and maybe I didn't really get sexually assaulted, maybe I was just accusing them. I mean, all of these things are put onto rape that are unfair. And so I think that the reason that consent is so important is because it takes all that burden of proof and that burden of speculation off of the survivor of rape and puts it onto the perpetuator. And it also takes the responsibility off. So as women, it's not our job to like not walk alone at night or carry a rape whistle, but it's actually all people's jobs to practice consent and to make sure that when they're interacting with someone sexually, that person feels safe and feels comfortable with what's happening. And if you haven't checked in about that, then you need to.
Yeah. How do you feel about this action? How do you think it went?
It was a lot smoother than we thought it was going to be. We thought that we would get shut down more immediately, and so it was nice that we had a second to put all of the stories up and sort of like honor each one and get nice, images of them so that we can share those with other people. And so I felt pretty good about it.
Likewise?
Yeah, it was, I think we were very nervous about the police.
And just being in a city that's not ours, because we've done,
Yeah.
I mean, I'm part of Luminous Intervention and I'm part of Force, and Luminous Intervention has done a lot of projections in Baltimore, but it's totally different in Baltimore, you know? Although actually, from what we experienced tonight, it's not that different.
Yeah, the police were very generous and very understanding, so we appreciated that. They let us project for, well, longer than we thought we'd be able to, which is great. That we were able to get all of the stories up.